Hey guys, welcome back to the Big Sew Along. I'm Jenny, and today I'm really excited for a couple of things. First of all, let me just tell you that once again, I had another vaccine, a booster yesterday, a COVID booster again. So if I sound a little like slow or, whatever, if I don't sound normal, it's because I'm a little sluggish today because of that. It happens to me every time. Anyways, I'm really super excited because my husband and I bought a house last weekend. I don't even know what else to say about it except that I'm really excited. I'm going to put a picture of it up here for you. I just have one picture. It's the exterior. It is a 1939 Art Deco house in a neighborhood not too far from where we live right now. A little like history about my house hunt. We had lived a couple of miles away from here for five or 6 years in a house that was 2,500 square feet, but it's just my husband and I, and so I felt like we had a lot of space that we weren't using, and I was really getting tired of cleaning space that we didn't use. So I sort of talked my husband into downsizing 5 years ago, and we moved into this house where we've been living ever since. This house is not quite 1,000 square feet, so it's a big change. That actually was fine until COVID hit, and my husband actually started working from home. Well, he was working strictly from home for a couple of months, and then even after that, like, he's never gone back to the office like 100% full time. He always works from home at least a day or two a week. So once that happened, we decided that we really did need a little more room. So anyways, long story short, we started looking at the beginning of this year, and this house came on the market like a couple of weeks ago. It was like, I've driven by this house a million times. I'm in love with this house. It's my dream. It literally is my dream house. I'm so excited. The other thing I'm really excited about is, for the first time, Detroit, and I'm going to put her name up here, posted on Instagram the Japans. I'm so excited that somebody posted Japans on Instagram. She used those for So Frugal. I can't remember what the challenge is, you guys. The Frugalissima challenge for whatever, where you use a free pattern and fabric that's in your stash or whatever. Anyways, I'll put a picture of her Japans up here. I snagged that off of Instagram. Detroit, thank you so much for posting and for, what's it called? Tagging me. I really appreciate it. I was super excited to see that. I had a couple other comments from last week that I wanted to talk about. First of all, I apologize. I had a lot of really wonderful comments last week, and just because of this whole house situation and everything, I was sort of like swamped with all of that. So it took me forever to get back to you guys to respond to your messages. I apologize for being so late about that. And thank you, as always, for leaving comments. It really does mean a lot to me that you do that. Okay. Terry and Kim both wanted to know what dress I was wearing in last week's video underneath my lichen duster. And that dress was, in fact, the Tina Givens Annabelle slip. Now, the Annabelle is a really wide, long slip. So I made this a few years ago, so I looked at my pattern and tried to sort of like backtrack and figure out what I did. The fabric I used for that was just a rayon Bemberg lining. So it was only 45 inches wide, which means I narrowed the dress so that it would fit on my fabric, and I also shortened it considerably. The other thing I did is I put elastic in the hem, and I just measured the hem and divided that by, multiplied that by 0.75. That was the length that I used for my elastic. And I just put, I didn't put a casing in that one. I actually just sewed, I used 3/8 inch elastic. I sewed it to the, sorry, I have something sticky on my hands all of a sudden. I'm like, I don't know where that came from. Maybe I spit on myself. Anyways, I used 3/8 inch elastic, and I sewed it to the wrong side of the slip. And then I folded it up and sewed it again. And then I gave it a really super good steaming, and that was it. That was another dress I was really not all that sure about when I first did it, but it's one of the things I wear the most often. I wear it all the time. Okay. And speaking of what I was wearing, today, I'm going to show you a picture right here. Right here. Today I'm wearing a Tina Givens Chantelle, also made like several years ago. This one is in a 100% cotton, like shirting weight. For my bias binding, I used an old t-shirt so you can see some of the print on it here and here. I really like this thing. This is the first time I made it, and this, like I said, this is several years ago. I have another one cut out, and I'm working on it right now, so hopefully I'll be able to show you that next week. But I wanted to show you the first one, since it's what I'm wearing today. Okay. Also, do you guys remember our conversation about Dolly? So Jen from Today in Jen's Sewing Room suggested that we change her name from Dolly to Dolly. Okay, seriously, I'm gonna stop talking about Dolly, but I do call her Dolly all the time now, just so you guys know. Also, for anybody who's interested in doing a Zoom chat with me, I think there are about 4 of us so far, maybe 5. Can you guys send me a message via Facebook Messenger? That would be awesome. I can't figure out how else to contact you guys so that we can get something set up. Okay, so that is really all the chit chat I have for today. I do have a, what's it called? A tutorial for the, what are we calling them? Plinka Rose. The Plinka Rose. The Plinka Nani Iro mashup. So, for anybody who's interested in checking that out, stay tuned and we'll come right back here. If you are not interested in that, then I will see you next week. Okay, this is our Plinka pant pattern, and I just copied one out on tissue paper. It's a little faint, so I hope you guys can see it. The first thing we're going to do is cut off our waistband. On mine, I've marked exactly where my waist sits. On me, it is 2 inches from the top of the original pattern, but yours might be higher or lower, just wherever the top of your pant is usually when you sew these. So this is where my waistline sits. I need a 1/2 inch seam allowance right at the top, because we're going to remove this waistband and then put on a separate waistband later. We'll need a seam allowance here. So I'm going to use 1/2 inch seam allowances, which means I'm going to cut mine 1/2 inch above that line. So right about there. The next thing we're going to do is, this is the side seam. This is the center, the inseam over here. We're going to add a seam allowance to this outside seam because we're going to make these with a pocket. So we'll want the outside seam there. So I'm just going to do that by adding a piece of tissue paper. Do very much in terms of altering the pattern. However, we are going to put some darts at the hem. So we're going to measure the hem. Our seam allowances, I always use 1/2 inch seam allowances. You can use whatever you usually use, but mark them off at the side. And then we're going to measure between those 2 marks. And it's 13.5. We're going to divide that by 3. So we're going to just call it 12 inches because that's easy to divide by 3. So 4 inches from this mark is right here. And 4 inches from this mark is right here. Now we're going to use those as our dart center points, okay? I'm going to turn this around this way. Our darts are going to be 2 inches wide. So from here to here, and from here to here. This original mark, this is our center, the center of our darts. We want these to be 12 inches long. So I'm marking from the center straight up. .12 inches. So right there. And on this one, it's going to be right there. Now we're just going to draw a straight line. This is our center of our dart. These are the side points of our dart. It's going to draw a straight line from here to here, here to here. There we go. And now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, so those are our hem darts done. So once we have this done, this is our back piece completed. So you could just cut 2 of these out as is. For the front piece, we're going to add front pockets, side pockets. And you can use any pocket you want. I am using the pocket from my Arthur pants, which is a 1-piece pocket. So this is the back of the pocket. This is the front of the pocket. It gets folded over like that, and it sits there like that. If you're using a 2-piece pocket, you can do this exact same process. You're just going to need to do it twice because you have 2 pieces, or you'll put them together like this and do it just once for both. Okay, so this is the pocket I want to use. This is the side of my pant. You can see if I line the edge of my pocket up with the edge of my pant, the top more or less with the top of my pant, you can see that is not going to fit. So, easy to fix. I think I'm going to use white tissue so you guys can see what I'm doing. So, we're going to need some tissue here on this side. Now, I can lay my pant back down here. Again, for this one, I'm just going to fold it in half, but if yours is a 2-part pocket, you can just lay them on top of each other. Okay, so this is my pocket, and now I can see if I line this corner up with the side of my pant, and the top up more or less with the top of my pant. And I open this up because you can't really see with 2 pieces of paper there. Okay. If I line this up, this point with the side of my pant, and this point up here is going to be as close to the top of the pant as I can get, but it doesn't have to be exact. We're going to add a little here so it's fine. So, I'm just going to trace out the pant outline underneath my tissue paper. Like that. Now, I'm going to cut along those lines. That's the center of my pant right there. Okay, like that. And then I'm just going to put my other piece underneath it and trim it so it's exactly the same. Now, when I put my pant down, I should be able, oops, I don't need this. It should fit right in that side seam, just like that. And then when I fold this over, this side should also fit, although it looks like I didn't really end up adding anything there. Yeah, so we're good. So now go ahead and cut your pockets. Then we're gonna add our opening here for our pocket. We're gonna lay this right next to the side seam there, and this right at the top. We're going to trace this opening. You can actually just do this right on your fabric if you don't want to cut it into your pattern piece. Okay, so that's going to be the opening for our pocket. So when we put this together, it will look like that. Okay, so the other thing we need to think about is hemming these pants. Once we put darts in the bottom here, the hem is going to be narrower, obviously. So you're not going to be able to just fold it up. You can just use a bias binding, or you can make a facing, which is my preference. And the way you would make a facing is by folding out your darts. I've just made a crease on one leg, and I'm folding it over to the other leg, and I'm going to pin that in place. And then we're going to do the same thing with this dart over here. Okay, now I want 1.5 inch hem, and I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to make a mark straight across this curve, 2 inches from the bottom of my pant. I'm just going to trace that. And then I'm going to trace the outline of my pant leg. So that's the side. That's the bottom. And that's the other side. And those are our hem facings. Now we're going to need 4 of those. 2 for the right leg and 2 for the left leg. So you can't just cut this front piece out just like this, but if you want to put pleats in the front, this is the way I have been doing it. I am going to trace out right onto my fabric. And I'm going to trace out the inseam only about halfway up. Okay, I'm gonna make a little mark right here at the center front. So this pant has 2 pleats that are 1.5 inches deep each, so that's 3 inches. We are going to move this top piece over, well actually we're going to move the whole thing over 3 inches. So I'm just going to measure from this edge 3 inches, which is right here. And also at that 3-inch mark, I'm going to make a little mark right here. Okay? You can actually fill that in. Now, I'm just going to move my pattern over, and I'm going to move it straight over 3 inches to there. Okay? Now, I'm going to finish tracing this part out, my crotch seam. And I'm afraid you're not going to be able to see this, so I'm going to try to move this over. Alright, so I'm just going to continue tracing this out. Tracing out my crotch seam here. So if I move my pattern a teeny bit. Okay. And then when I get to the crotch point, I'm just going to make one mark down. It doesn't have to be very far, just a little bit. Now, you can see here, this is where we stopped our tracing before. This is the crotch point. We need to connect those two. And I'm going to do that with my French curve. So I really don't want that to be too big a curve. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And you don't have to match up to this point. That's just so we know where we are. You want this point to match up with your crotch point. So I think that looks pretty good right there. Perfect. Now, you've added 3 inches to the top where you're going to put your pleats, but you haven't added anything to the hem, which is already pretty wide. Okay, so now for our pleats. This is the top of our pant. This is our pocket. I'm using 1/2 inch seam allowances on here, so I'm going to mark 1/2 inch from this front seam. My first pleat is going to be 3 inches from the end of my seam allowance, like right the mark I just made. So 1, 2, 3 is right here. That is going to be 1.5 inches. So I'll make another mark here. These pleats are 3 inches long, so you can go ahead and mark that as well. That's one. Then the next one is going to be 1.5 inches away from this. So right here is our next one. And that one is also 1.5 inches wide. So another 1.5 inches that way. And then again, these are 3 inches long. Okay. Now that's your front. You need to mark your darts, your pleats on the other piece, which is the back side. You also need to mark your darts here at the hem, just like we did with the back piece. And you should see, this really should fit in there pretty well. Okay, this is one of our fronts, and you can see here at the top, I've sewn my pleats in. I just wanted to point out This is the center front over here. You can fold these pleats any way you want. You can fold them, press them towards the front, which will make your pleats lay, let's see if I can get that, like that, towards the side, that's the way I prefer to do it. But you can also press them towards the side, which makes the pleats fold towards the front. You can also open the pleat up like that and sew it flat, and then you have a box pleat that looks like that. Totally up to you how you do it. I also wanted to point out, when we marked our pleats, we marked a line down each side of our pleat and then one that connects them. We're not sewing that line that connects them at the bottom. You want that to be open. I just marked that so I remember which two lines go together. Okay, and then down here at the hems, I think it's easier, these darts are not going to make any difference if you sew them now or if you sew them after your pant leg is put together, so it's easier just to do it now. Again, I prefer to press mine towards the center so they look like that, but it really doesn't matter. You can press them any way you like. So now, the next thing you're going to do is press your darts, base these down one way or another so they don't flap around on you. You're going to go ahead and put your pocket in, and then we're going to sew our pants together the way you normally do. So 2 pant, side seams, inseams, crotch seam, and then we will come back and talk about our waistband and our hem. Okay, so I'm just pinning my pant leg together here, and you can see, because we added, for those pleats, we moved this front over and added width to this. This leg, the inseam on the front, is now going to be longer than the inseam on the back. So my recommendation is to just get it as close to that edge as you can, like that. You'll see that the front is going to be a little higher. It's fine. And then just ease the rest of this in. You're going to have to sort of stretch the back leg a little bit. Once you've sewn this seam, you can just go right through here and trim this off. And you'll just trim it like this. Taper it out to nothing so that that matches there. For our waistband, we're going to want to cut a piece of fabric that is long enough to go all the way around the top of our pants. For the width, we're going to take the width of your elastic. Mine is 1 inch. And then your seam allowance, mine is 1/2 inch, so that's 1.5 inches. We're going to double that, so that's going to make my band 3 inches wide. Now to that, I add 1/4 inch. That way, when I fold this over and sew it on with my 1/2 inch seam allowance, this will be a little bit, my casing will be a little bit wider than my actual elastic, and that'll just make it easier to get your elastic in. If you cut it exactly 1 inch plus your seam allowance, it's just going to be really tight to get your elastic in. Okay, so that's it for the waistband. For the hem, let's turn these inside out. Of course, if you are using a binding, you'll just put your binding on like you normally would. But if you're using a facing, and you may or may not want to do this, it's totally up to you. My fabric is pretty thin, so it's probably not necessary, but if you're using a thicker fabric, you're probably going to want to reduce the bulk here a little bit. And the way I do that is, we can see that our facing goes up to here and here. So if you want to reduce the bulk a little on these pleats, You can trim this down. Don't trim it too close. Give yourself about 1/8 of an inch there. And then stop about 1/2 an inch away from where your facing will end. Like that. That is going to reduce the bulk in your hem, but you have enough left, so when you put your facing on, you'll sew it down and it'll catch that pleat and hold it in place. Alright guys, so I will say the only thing about these, you can see in the photos, I used a 1-inch elastic waistband for these. My original Nani Iro pants have a 2-inch waistband, which I have to be honest with you, I think I like better. So, anyways, I am really happy with the way these came out. I hope the tutorial was clear enough. I didn't obviously go through every step of the sewing because I just assumed that you guys at this point know most of that stuff. Anyways, that's it for me this week, you guys. Thank you as always for thank you as always for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Until then, peace and happy sewing.